The ashes of the Accord. The stars were dying, one by one. From the high balcony of the Accord citadel, I watched as another sun dimmed to crimson dust in the void. The Vorath had consumed it, not metaphorically, not in conquest, but literally, stripped its planets to stone and siphoned its energy until only a shadow remained. Our fleets had tried to defend that system. None returned. We were losing. No, we had already lost. The others simply refused to say it aloud. Inside the council chamber, the air was heavy with despair and the metallic scent of ionized air. Representatives of 17 surviving species sat in a broken circle, the proud Cathal with their crystalline skin dulled to gray, the Varen who once spoke in song now whispering in static. Even the mechanical seraphs, machines that felt no fear, had slowed their internal clocks to save energy. It was the quiet of a dying empire. I, High Strategos Karan of the Valori, presided over this gathering, though it felt more like overseeing a funeral than a council. The projections on the central holosphere told the story, our borders collapsing, our fleets dwindling, the Vorath expanding like a rot in flesh. "We cannot hold the meridian line," said Admiral Zor of the Varen, his voice flickering through damaged vocal cords. "Our reinforcements never arrived. Communications are gone. The swarm adapts faster than we can rebuild." A murmur of resignation rippled through the chamber. Then someone spoke from the far end of the circle, a quiet voice, trembling but defiant. "There is another option." The council turned toward her, Archivist Lethra, a scholar from the archive worlds. She activated a projection, and before us appeared a cluster of ancient star maps. In the center, one system pulsed with a dull blue light. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a low hiss filled the chamber. "The Terrans," someone muttered. "You can't be serious." Lethra's voice shook, but she continued. "They were banished, yes. But they fought the Vorath once, before any of us. Their tactics were brutal, unrestrained, but effective. The siege of Karthus Prime." "I was there," interrupted Zor, bitterness in his tone. "They detonated a moon to stop an invasion. Billions died. Their own allies among them. They won," Lethra countered softly. "Silence again. The kind that carries memory, the kind that tastes like shame. Humans had been exiled 2 centuries ago after their wars scarred half the Outer Rim. The Accord had labeled them unstable, barbaric, too emotional for unity. And yet, here we were, standing on the edge of extinction, whispering their name like a prayer to forgotten gods. I looked at the fading map of our once great alliance. The Vorath had torn through entire sectors in months. None of our technologies, plasma shields, quantum barriers, psionic strikes, had slowed them. They learned. They adapted. They devoured. Perhaps what we needed wasn't wisdom or restraint. Perhaps we needed something raw, something desperate. "The humans will not answer," said one delegate. "Even if they did, they would not forgive us." "Then we have nothing to lose," I said quietly. My own voice surprised me with its resolve. "Send the signal." Lethra hesitated only a moment before nodding. Her thin fingers danced across the console, reactivating a frequency untouched for centuries, a distress beacon encoded in the oldest human dialects. The transmission pulsed through subspace, carrying a simple message. "To the lost sons and daughters of Earth, the Accord calls for your aid. We are failing." The beacon vanished into the abyss. We sat in silence as the echoes faded. Outside the viewport, another star went dark. Later, when the others had gone, I remained alone in the chamber. The shadows stretched long across the marble floor. I thought of the stories my ancestors told, of the humans' fire, their fury, their endless defiance. Monsters, some called them. Saviors, others whispered. I didn't know which to believe. But as the light of the dying sun flickered across the council hall, a strange feeling stirred in my chest, something I had not felt in years. Not hope, not faith. It was fear. And as the words escaped my lips, I knew they would echo across history. We were losing, so we called humanity. The return of the forgotten. 3 cycles passed. No response. No signal. No sign. The distress beacon had vanished into the endless dark, and with it, the last shred of our dignity. We had called for help from those we once exiled, and the void had answered with silence. The Council had already begun dismantling the emergency chambers when the first anomaly appeared. At first, the scanners misread it, a distortion in subspace, a flicker too dense for natural gravity. Then the alarms screamed. Energy readings off the scale. Vessels emerging from the void, silent, cold, massive. Human ships. I had expected crude machines of metal and flame, relics of a reckless race. What emerged instead froze every voice in the command bridge. Black hulls without insignia, faceted like obsidian, absorbing starlight instead of reflecting it. No lights, no transmissions, only faint blue patterns moving like veins across their surface. They did not drift, they hunted, even while standing still. "Identify yourself," the Valori comm officer called into the dark. No answer. Then a transmission cut through every frequency in the Accord's network, clear, sharp, and unmistakably human. Signal received. Transmission verified. Humanity acknowledges your call. The bridge fell silent. For the first time in centuries, we heard their language spoken aloud. One of the ships, marked only by a strange white emblem of a clawed hand grasping a sun, broke formation and descended toward the citadel. Its engines made no sound, only a pressure in the air, as though the void itself bent around its presence. They docked without request for clearance. A squad of human soldiers entered first, armored in matte gray suits that rippled like liquid metal. Helmets mirrored the room, showing us our own faces distorted. Behind them walked a woman, tall, severe, her eyes a pale silver that caught every motion. She wore no weapons, only a dark uniform with a single star pinned to the collar. "I am Admiral Sarah Dorn of the Terran Vanguard," she said, her voice calm, deliberate. "You called us." Lethra stepped forward, her tone trembling. "We did. The Accord faces extinction. The Vorath Swarm." Dorn raised a hand. "We know. We've been watching." A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. "Watching? For how long? From where?" She continued, her tone almost detached. "The Vorath expansion began near the Perseus edge, far from your borders, but close to our observation perimeter. We anticipated your losses." "You anticipated?" I couldn't stop the words from spilling out. "You knew, and you did nothing?" Her gaze met mine, unflinching. "You banished us, strategos. You erased our colonies, our histories, our people. We learned not to interfere." Her words hung in the air like a blade. Every species in the room looked away, because she was right. But then, after a long pause, she said, "Still, we came." The humans brought data cores filled with enemy analysis, everything they had learned fighting the Vorath in secret. They had been studying the swarm, dissecting captured drones, mapping neural patterns across star clusters. They spoke of tactics that made no sense to us: gravitational inversion, energy denial fields, psychological warfare. They didn't call their soldiers defenders or protectors. They called them exterminators. When I asked why, Dorn answered simply, "Because you cannot negotiate with hunger." The Council offered them command of a single sector, the Vexa line, where our last fleets held against the swarm. Most of us expected them to refuse, or to demand tribute. Instead, Dorn nodded. "We'll take it." Her calmness was unnerving. The Accord's finest generals spoke in rhetoric, honor, sacrifice, glory. The humans spoke in logistics, supply routes, firing arcs, fallback vectors. Every word was measured, practical, devoid of emotion. That night, as I stood by the viewport watching their fleet reposition above the citadel, I felt a chill run down my spine. The humans moved like predators. No wasted motion, no visible lights, no hesitation. Even their silence was strategic. I found myself whispering, "What have we brought back?" From behind me, Admiral Dorn's reflection appeared in the glass. I hadn't heard her enter. "You brought back what you threw away," she said softly. "And now, you'll see what it costs to survive." Outside, the human fleet began to shift formation, dozens of ships aligning with mechanical precision, their black hulls turning toward the dark frontier where the Vorath waited. For the first time in years, the war map changed. New signals lit the edge of the galaxy, human formations advancing where no one else dared. As I watched their fleet disappear into the dark, I realized something terrible. We had not called for allies. We had summoned predators. And the void was about to remember what humanity truly was. The Iron Symphony. War had a sound. For most of us, it was chaos, screams over open comms, the hiss of collapsing shields, the thunder of dying ships. But when the humans arrived at the Vexor line, war began to sound like music. The Accord's fleets had gathered in orbit around the shattered remains of Vexor 4, a dying world stripped of its oceans. What remained of our ships hovered there, battered and disorganized, their formations fractured. The Vorath Swarm loomed beyond the asteroid belt, an endless tide of chitin and metal, their hive signatures flickering like static storms. The humans didn't wait. Their fleet arrived in absolute silence. No transmissions, no coordination chatter, only motion. Hundreds of ships fanning out in a pattern I didn't understand until I looked closer. It was mathematical, rhythmic, almost elegant. Admiral Dorn's voice came across the shared frequency, calm and sharp as a blade. All units. Engage pattern Helios. Commence Operation Bastion. No speech. No rallying cry. Just orders. And then it began. The first human salvo struck before the Vorath had even finished adjusting their vectors. Invisible until impact, kinetic rods accelerated to near-light speed, they tore through the swarm like divine wrath. Thousands of enemy bioships detonated in synchronized bursts, forming shockwaves that rolled across the system. The humans didn't celebrate. Their fleet shifted instantly, maintaining rhythm, every movement coordinated down to milliseconds. Dorn's voice echoed again, clipped and precise. Section Beta, collapse orbit. Anchor gravity wells. Section Gamma, synchronize fire. Maintain flux. Their ships were playing a symphony of destruction, each strike a note, each maneuver a chord. The Accord officers around me stood frozen, watching the feed as the impossible unfolded. The Vorath adapted, as they always did, forming dense clouds, shielding their cores, multiplying. They surged toward the human line. But instead of retreating, the humans advanced. They let the swarm surround them. "Are they insane?" shouted one of my lieutenants. "They're walking into—" "Watch," I said. The human flagship, TNS Resolution, pulsed once, then unleashed something I had never seen. Space around it rippled. The gravity wells they'd anchored collapsed inward, dragging the Vorath into a maelstrom of collapsing orbits. Whole clusters of the enemy folded in on themselves, crushed to dust by their own momentum. The screams over the swarm channel were not voices, but frequencies, the sound of a hive mind fracturing. "Gravitational warfare," whispered Lethra beside me. "They weaponized space itself." Minutes felt like hours. The Voratha's endless tide turned into drifting debris fields. And through it all, the humans kept moving, unflinching, methodical, beautiful in their terror. But beauty has a cost. As the battle raged, I saw one human cruiser, Aegis, take a direct impact. Instead of breaking apart, it ignited its own reactor, transforming into a white-hot sphere that consumed 1,000 Vorath vessels with it. Self-destruction, calculated, sacrificed for tactical gain. "Why would they?" I began. Dorn's voice interrupted over the command channel. "The swarm cannot adapt if there's nothing left to learn from. Burn everything. Leave nothing behind." And they did. Every trace of life, every fragment of enemy code, sterilized in nuclear fire. When it was over, the stars themselves seemed dimmer. The humans had won. The Vorath were gone from the Vexor line. The war map, for the first time in years, glowed blue again. Yet no one in the Accord fleet cheered. We watched in silence as the human ships drifted through the wreckage, collecting nothing, transmitting nothing. Their dead were gone, their silence unbroken. No memorials, no songs. Just efficiency. Later, aboard the command deck, I confronted Admiral Dorn. "You destroyed half a system," I said. "You burned everything, even the colonies." Her pale eyes met mine, emotionless. "You can't win wars against monsters by being better," she said. "You win by being worse." I wanted to argue, to say there had to be another way, but the words felt hollow. Because deep down, I knew she was right. Outside the viewport, the remains of the Vorath drifted like ash in the void, and amidst that silence, the human fleet turned toward the next front without a word. They had saved us. But as I watched those black ships fade into the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had unleashed something far older and far more dangerous than the swarm itself. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The price of survival. The war ended not with triumph, but with silence. In the final campaign, the humans drove the Vorath back to the Nexus Abyss, the black cradle of their hive worlds, a place no Accord vessel had ever dared to enter. The swarm poured out in impossible numbers, their organic fleets forming living clouds around a dying star. Every instinct told us to retreat. The humans didn't. The Terran vanguard assembled there, hundreds of ships aligned in perfect formation, the void lit by their engines like a constellation reborn. Admiral Dorn stood on the bridge of her flagship, resolution, expression carved from stone. I was there beside her, a reluctant witness. If you strike the core, I warned, you'll destabilize the entire system. The blast will end them, she said simply. There was no battle cry, no announcement, just the quiet hum of purpose. Humanity's fleet moved as one. They deployed devices I had never seen before, spheres of black metal, the size of moons, pulsing with a low, rhythmic energy. They called them stellar seeds. When activated, each one tore open a singularity, devouring everything within its gravity well. The Vorath swarmed against them, millions of ships clawing at the impossible, and vanished into the event horizon. Then the humans detonated the star. The explosion devoured half the system. Space itself rippled. Every sensor went blind. For several minutes, there was only static, and then silence. When it cleared, the Nexus Abyss was gone. So was the Vorath. We had won. The Accord Council declared victory across every channel. Entire worlds lit their skies in celebration. Survivors cried in the streets, believing the nightmare was over. For the first time in living memory, the war map was clear of red. But the humans did not celebrate. Their fleet drifted in formation above the ruins of the abyss. No signal. No demands. No message. Just stillness, like an army that had fulfilled its purpose and was now waiting for the next war. I found Admiral Dorn again on the observation deck of her flagship. The battle had left her armor scorched, her expression hollow. Beyond the viewport, I saw what they had created, a wound in space, where the light of the destroyed system still flickered like a dying ember. "You did it," I said quietly. "You saved us all." Her gaze remained fixed on the void. "Saved you," she repeated. "Yes. For now. For now." She turned to face me. "You think this victory will teach peace? It won't. The Vorath were just one hunger among many. The galaxy breeds them, in flesh, in politics, in faith. You'll rebuild, and you'll forget. Until the next extinction comes. You sound like you regret it." "I don't regret surviving," she said. "I regret what we had to become to do it." For the first time, I saw something behind her cold exterior. Exhaustion. Centuries of it. The weight of carrying the memory of every war humanity had ever fought. "You called us because you needed monsters," she continued. "So we became them again." I had no answer. The following day, the human fleet began to move, not toward the Accord's worlds, but away. They refused the Council's invitation to join the new defense pact. They left their communications open for exactly 3 minutes, long enough to transmit a single message across every frequency. Humanity acknowledges the conclusion of hostilities. We are returning beyond the frontier. Do not call us again unless you are ready to face what comes with us. Then their ships vanished into the void, one by one, silent, black, and mercilessly beautiful. Within hours, there was nothing left but starlight and the memory of their engines. The Accord rebuilt. The people sang songs of victory. They called us heroes. But late at night, when I stand before the stars, I remember the eyes of Admiral Dorn, cold, steady, tired, and I wonder if we truly won, or merely delayed the inevitable. Because when the swarm came for us, we called for humanity. And they answered. They burned the stars to save us. They taught the void to fear again. And as long as that fire exists somewhere out there, silent, watching, the galaxy will never forget the day the monsters of Earth returned. We were failing, so we called humanity. And humanity came.